done a run through. We didn't hit record, and we laid down something gold. And then you got to try and recreate it, and you lose it. Greg, thank you so much for coming on and doing this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
How's life? What are you up to at the moment?
Well, I'm home for a week here before we hit the road again. We're going out again we're in Nashville on Tuesday and head out for a couple 2.5 weeks, something like that.
Okay.
For another jaunt.
Around the country.
I was supposed to be at Wildwood this week doing some videos, but I got the cove. I got COVID-19. And so I was down for the count for a few days, but now I'm good.
Good. Yeah, I got something at Christmas and I still haven't shaken it. It's this horrible cough and 2 months.
Yes, it's just pestilence.
Yes, yeah. So who were you out on the road with? Is your trio?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And so where's it taking you?
Well, we were just out in California. We routed out there we did like Minneapolis. And then we were in Denver, and then we were down in Phoenix, and then we were in the LA area for about 7 days, Southern California. And then we were in Northern California, and then we ended up in Portland, Oregon, and then drove home from there, and then home for about a week and a half. And then, so this next time we're going down south. So we're going like Nashville, Knoxville, Atlanta, Asheville, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, and then we're in Florida, and we spend the rest of the time in Florida, a week doing stuff down there.
Nice.
And then we return, and then home for a couple weeks. Then I'll go out to Wildwood and do my thing, and then April we go out again, going down south to Texas, and nice. So we just keep on keeping on. It's kind of it just keeps on rolling.
I find it stunning that just how big the United States is. I remember when I flew into New York once, and we were supposed to get a flight from New York to Canada, then Canada to Chicago to see some friends, and then it was like a flying back out. And when we got to New York, they said flights are cancelled, weather's shit, everyone's grounded. We're like, all right, okay. Why don't we hire a car and drive there? And they're like, no. Okay, what about a train? Like, no. It's quicker for you to wait tomorrow and then you fly out.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it was just
absolutely
insane. So touring around the States, I mean, I know your gas prices have gone up, same as everybody's, but it must just be so fucking expensive just to drive to. Do you drive? Do you fly? Do you?
We drive. You know what? It works out.
Yeah.
It's we prior to this past tour, we'd always Toby, who plays organ in the band, he had a Chevy Tahoe and a trailer, and we just stuff everything in there and kind of go from there.
Okay.
And even though we're driving all over the place, I mean, that, for instance, that drive from Portland back to Minneapolis was 20 some hours, and then and then it's 5 hours between Minneapolis and Milwaukee. So that was a long way to go, but we're used to it at this point. It's kind of funny when we're like, oh, that's only a 12-hour drive.
Yeah. So when I get gigs coming, if it's over 3 hours, I'm looking at it going, do I really want to do it? Do you know what? I'll throw on an extra couple of £100 and we'll get a hotel.
Right. Exactly.
So 3 hours for you is just round the corner.
Exactly. Totally. So what we do is, as long as we, we're playing more than we're sitting. So if we're out and we got a couple days, we just end up making dough. I mean, our overhead is low.
Yeah.
And I just bought a new vehicle to tour with. That's kind of an all-in-one, kind of a crew van, kind of a bigger. It's one of those Ford 350 Transit 350s. So, all right. It's got room for all the gear and us in it, so we don't need the trailer anymore. And it fits in a regular, like, single parking space, which is nice. And it doesn't. Cool. It's not as egregious gas mileage wise as the old Chevy Tahoe with the trailer. So, all said and done, I mean, it just works. I mean, we're able to go out and do our thing, and enough people have been coming out, and the merch sales have been what they've been. So every time we come back, we've made grown up money, which is nice.
Good.
I mean, we're not we're not at any point where we're going to be, buying a McLaren or something like that. But we
As long as
are
you're ticking
paying
over,
the
it's good.
bills.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what it's all about. So, in prep for this, I did a little search on you, and I read somewhere, I can't remember where I read it, that you were voted one of the greatest guitar teachers ever. Did you read that? Have you seen that?
Yeah, it was a weird one. Yeah, it's weird. They make these lists, and you're always, you're flattered to be on them. I always say, as I like to say with any of this stuff, it's like all lists and top tens and underrated and overrated are bullshit unless you're on them. Then it's like, oh well,
I must be.
It must be something. Because unfortunately, that's the only metric that most people can understand. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a. But it was an interesting thing to be put on the list of teachers because it's kind of it's a compliment, but it's also kind of a weird thing because there's always been that mantra. Well, those that those that play, and those that teach.
Or those that don't teach, or those that can't teach.
And then to my retort to that is that those that survive do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because in order to, I've got 4 kids, and in order to make a living as a musician, man, I've had to wear a lot of hats. No pun intended. Yeah. But the it's always been about the playing. The playing has always been first and foremost. Me, leading a band, writing music, putting out recording. That's always what it's been about for me. But there's obviously been, ancillary things that I've had to do to make dough. And I kind of got thrusted into the teaching thing just as a result of, needing to do whatever I could to make some sweet dough. So I just found out I had a knack for being able to describe things that related to people without being too pedantic or just too puzzling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think primarily because I didn't necessarily come out of an education format. You know what I mean? That made it. Yeah. I just had more of a, I don't know, just a different slant on it that made it interesting. So it was through the Hal Leonard thing when I started doing the books for them and the videos, and I did these 2 Stevie Ray Vaughan instructional things years and years and years ago, like 20 some years ago now. Yeah. And I'm just amazed at the people that come up to me and say, man, I had those, videos and I learned so much from them, and it's awesome. So I'm, any kind of positive reinforcement, any kind of impact that you make on people for the positive, hey, that's, I'll take it.
That's good. I mean, it's for me, my perspective of it is you're still doing music. You're not working in an office. You're not doing something that you don't like. Even, have you taught privately? Do you have people come to the house? Did you ever do that gig?
Not a lot. I mean, there was a point in time where I taught at a music store for a while, and had a few students, and then I stopped doing that because I didn't have time or whatever the case may be. But I've always had a few students here and there but nothing ever. I was never the guy that was my main source of income and what I did all the time.
Yeah, sure.
I did teach at a college for about a year and a half.
Okay. Which college was that?
Well, it was the in Minneapolis. There was a school called the McNally Smith College of Music, which was a really nice school. Had a really nice campus downtown St. Paul.
Yeah.
And my son was going there, and one of the teachers that was one of the professors there, whatever you want to call them, full-time instructors, was leaving to actually go to Berkeley to teach, and he had this class that was like a survey of styles. And so my buddy Joe Elliott, who ran the guitar department there, said, hey, could we interest you in teaching this class? And I said, well, I'm traveling around doing my thing. I don't really have, the ability to be here consistently. And he's like, well, we only need you for 2 days a week. And I'm like, yeah, again, I've got all these other commitments. And they're like, well, we'll put you on salary. Your kid goes to school for free and you get full-time benefits. I said, can it be Monday and Tuesday?
I'll see you Monday.
And so I taught Mondays and Tuesdays up there. And I did this, and I did a survey of styles, and it was both a written and a so there were musical examples as well as like, just regular written material, or an oral history as well, which was fun and fascinating. So I did that, and then I had consistent students as well that I would teach. Okay. And I found that I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the preparation for both the class and for coming up with something fun to do every week with the students. The only part I thought was crippling and crushing, was the fact that, I just love playing and learning, and I'm so excited about what I do, and then when you're in a class where, like, people would come in and no one would be prepared. One guy would have prepared his stuff, and the rest of the guys are, looking at I'm like, it just was, I just couldn't understand it. It was beyond my understanding. And a lot of times that, you're in lessons with people and you're like, you want to do this for a living? But you can't say that, you know what I mean? Because they need everyone, they need the money for teaching, for actually keeping the school open. So you're really in kind of a weird situation where you're trying to make sure these people have a positive experience and teach them as much as they can. But at the same time, you're thinking, holy shit, this person doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell. But, but then, I remember talking to a buddy of mine who taught at Berkeley, and he's like, what have you been doing lately? And I said, well, in addition to everything else, I've started teaching at this college, and the college is not there anymore, by the way. There was some malfeasance, but McNally and Smith were doing some squirrely stuff with the loot, I think, and ended up having to close the school. But it was a really good school, and there was a great faculty. It was, and some great students went there and proceeded to go out and do some great things. But anyway, but I was talking to this buddy of mine who was teaching at Berkeley, and I kind of told him, about my kind of crisis of conscience. You're teaching. At what point do you just say, listen, you need to do something else, or it's just troubling? And he said, well, hey, the way he had a similar problem, and he said, when you're teaching at one of those big schools, you got to just have the mindset of all of these other students are there so that the one or two that really have a chance can actually have an opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
And which it makes sense, but at the same point, man, it's a hard one to get my brain around. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's do you sacrifice the ones that have a chance for the ones that haven't got, like you said, haven't got a chance? I think the answer is no, because everybody's there. They're all in the same room. They've all got the same material. They've all got the same time, the same opportunity. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
So,
and I guess it's ultimately up to those individuals to figure that out on their own. They're paying, they're doing the due. And to be honest, if there's probably students in there that maybe aren't the best musicians, but they're the craftiest in terms of using the talents that they do have and commodifying them in a way to make money. You know what I mean? So ultimately it was up to it's up to the individual to do with it as they will. But it's a hard thing to get your brain around, because those schools are not cheap. This school was not inexpensive to go to. So either the people going there are taking out pretty massive loans to go there, or their parents are forking over a whole lot of cash.
Well, you'd think that would inspire them to do a bit of work to get something out of it.
Yeah, you'd think.
But I don't know, maybe it was just the college experience that they were after. They'd just come in 1 or 2 days a week, go to the bar, get drunk, and hey, I'm a musician. So
Exactly. Okay. So, interesting enough.
Yeah. So you said you didn't come out of like music education. Do you read music?
Well, I did go to school for music, but I didn't go. But it was a performance degree, right? So I wasn't trained as a teacher. You know what I mean? in terms of as like going for music education or something like that. But I did go to school for music, and my dad was very insistent I go to college.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about it is I never even got my degree. I went for 4 years. I did all my music curriculum. I did a good chunk of my general degree requirements, but I still had a good semester and a half maybe left of doing all my. And by that time, I was gigging all the time, and I was in the small town in Wisconsin, and I would always have to go back to, the big city in order to do my gigs and whatnot. So I finally like, I just can't do it anymore. I can't be in this town. And then I was going to get the credits done while I was in the big town to just get my degree at the college, but I just never ended up doing it. Okay. And then years later, I was going to, when I was teaching at that college, I thought maybe it'd be a good idea because I can get free credits here to just finish it. And just never had an opportunity to do it. And I remember my dad, in his latter years was like, boy, it always disappointed me that, you never got your degree. I go, Dad, I ended up teaching at a college.
Yeah.
So I think we're good.
I think I made it. I crossed the bridge. Okay. So can you read music?
I can, but I think like most guitar players, I'm not the greatest at extent. Like if someone put a chart in front of me with a bunch of notes on it, I'm going to have to woodshed it. If they put a chart in front of me with rhythmic notation and chords, just the name of the chords written out, I can read that down all day long. Yeah. But it always would take me a second to go. Every time I would do a session, the first thing I'd do is I'd scan the chart for any kind of single note line, and I'd always kind of just like woodshed it real quick.
Yeah.
And to make sure I had it. But again, not that I'm ever in those situations anymore where I have to read charts. I make charts for people. And if I do have to play with somebody else and they don't have charts for their tunes, I'll chart them out. But typically what I do is I'll chart them out, and in charting them out, I've memorized them. So I don't end up actually using the charts. But if I do a gig where, every now and again, I haven't probably done one in 10 years, but there'd be different guys in town. They'd be like, hey, are you in town? I'd be like, yeah. It's like, hey, I got a wedding gig on Saturday at such and such country club, the kind where you show up with your tux.
Yeah.
And you play a set of jazz standards, and then you read out of the book for all the different other things. And so I would do that, and that was never a problem, So I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, you don't look at it. It's not Egyptian hieroglyphics, and you don't shit yourself. But
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know why it's so uncommon for guitar players not to read. Like, I don't know many sax players or trumpet players that can't read. I guess it's just a rock and roll thing that started maybe around the Beatles.
Well, I think it's for me. I think it's because even in high school, when you're in jazz band and playing in the pit band for one of the musicals or whatever, 99% of the time, a guitar player is just reading chord charts.
Yeah.
I mean, and not even voiced chords. It's just the name of the chord, and then, the hash marks for, it's in 4/4, there's 4 hash marks, and it's kind of up to you to, to interpret the chords, and then, whatever stylistic grab bag of tricks that you have for whatever the tune calls for, you come up with it. Whereas horn players and people who are bass players and whatnot, a lot of time their parts are specifically written out, so they get a lot more practice.
Yeah.
Whereas guitar players, we never, and even if when you're playing standards with people, again, 9 times out of 10, the guitar player's comping, you know what I mean? And then soloing over the chord changes. You don't even have to read the head. So, but again, I think, if you're a jazz player and you're more in that environment where you're reading charts more, you're going to be better sight reader anyway. But I remember when I was in school, they're making you just absolutely paranoid about your sight reading, because one of the aspirations was to be a session musician. And where I live, it was like everyone went to Chicago, because at the time, you could make a pretty decent, middle-class living by just doing sessions during the day, because a lot of the jingle houses did their business in Chicago. So you could do sessions all day and do gigs at night if you wanted to, or just do sessions during the day and not do anything at night. Yeah. But I remember the kind of the word was, in Chicago, you've got to be such a good sight reader that when they run through it once, they're not seeing if you know it. They're seeing if the notes on the page are written correctly. You're like, holy shit. The pressure, you got to be such a good sight reader. And I'm like, well, I'll never end up doing that, because my sight reading, single note lines are, and then God forbid there'd be any voicings written out. Like if it just says the name of the chord, I'm good.
Yeah.
So I remember I got called to do sessions down in Chicago, and the first day I'm like shitting bricks. I'm like, oh, great. And I remember I went in and there were three, it was a Bank America commercial. And I go in for the session and there's all these named session guys in there. I knew one of the other guys. He's like, do you have any idea who's in this room? I go, I don't want to know because I'm already freaking out.
Yeah.
But I ended up just reading the chart, the chords and coming up with parts. And then there was, one line, a melody line. And at one point, after one of the takes, the producer comes in and goes, hey, I want you to double Howard's part. Well, it was Howard Levy from Fleck and the Flecktones, right? And he was playing, he was playing harp, and I had to do a unison line with him. And so I'm like, oh, great. Okay. So while the producer was going around the room talking to everybody else, I just made sure I would shadow that line. Now, granted, it was not that complex. You know what I mean?
But when the pressure's on and you're looking at dots, it can be a bit like, what is that? And you're counting up like C, E,
exactly.
F, G.
Exactly.
B. Right, that's a B.
Right. Yeah. And so I made sure I got it, and it went fine. And that was that. And then the very next day I got called for another session, and I ended up just doing a lot of that. So, cool. But, but again, because of the timing that I ended up doing sessions, everyone had demos. It wasn't like everything was just written and you had to interpret the page. It's like they would play the demo and they'd have a chart for it, but you could hear what was going on. So you were reading the chart, but at least you had some kind of by ear reference that you could draw from. So I think it was just a lot easier. When they would kind of refer to back in the 40s and 50s and even in the 30s, when every radio station had a house band and they're accompanying the guests and they're reading down this, that, the next thing. I mean, that was just what was expected, so everyone could do it. I think if it'd be the same way now. I mean, if that was expected as part of the job, it would, we would just all know how to do it to the level of being a professional, because that's what the expectation was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yes, I know. It's interesting because I don't do a lot of reading, but I got a pit gig doing Legally Blonde.
Oh yeah.
And they sent the charts over. I took a look at them, but like you said, there's recordings of it. Here's the live recording that the band did in London. You can I was like, okay, so even so, some of the tunes, it's fucking hell. Chord charts, chord slashes, dominant chords, flat, altered flat fifth slash chords over B flat, and stacked chord parts, key changes. It's a fucking roast. But I got a couple of months on it, so.
Well, there you go.
But it's good. It's a good thing to put yourself. I think it's good to put yourself in those situations that make you feel a bit uncomfortable, because that's
absolutely
when you start to grow.
Right.
So anyway,
with being a musician in general, I mean, that's the one thing I tell folk who ask, well, how do you make a living? And it's like you say yes to everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless it's doesn't involve any kind of sacrifice of any
small children,
physical annihilation. But I remember getting called, hey, do you play flamenco guitar?
Sure.
I'm like, well, what is it for? It's for a 30-second ad. I go, yes, I do.
Yeah, I could do that.
So I remember I went out and I actually bought like a $300 nylon string guitar, and I went to the public library and I got a Paco de la Chia record, and I listened to that as I drove down to Chicago, which was at about an hour and 20 minutes to get there. And I went in there and I heard the demo, and all I had to do was just affect a little bit of a flamenco-y thing, and they're like, great, done. And I'm like, okay, out the door we go. So the answer is say yes.
Yeah. So I heard a story. I can't remember which player it was, but they were called in on a session, Steve Lukather or somebody like that, and they had a guitar, electric guitar, acoustic guitar, 12-string, banjo, mandolin, ukulele, and they were asking him like, how the fuck do you have the time to play all of these? Because all of these instruments tuned to a guitar.
Right.
So exactly. I pick up a mandolin, there's a D chord. There's a C chord. I can, and they're like, oh, interesting. So
exactly.
just these lovely little workarounds to get you on the gig. Get you on the gig or get the session done.
Totally.
Yeah. So the big sort of crux of this podcast that I set up was about, how do we get better as musicians? And that can kind of I've kind of left it ambiguous so it can be interpreted. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on getting better, and how's it sort of changed over the years? Do you strive for it, or are you just kind of happy where you are just to maintain it?
Well, that's an interesting question, because over the years I kind of set like little bars for myself to try to get better. I remember when I came out with my first CD of, my original incarnation of my band, which was pretty popular in the area here, and we were making forays into other markets, and it was a great band. And I sent my CD into Guitar Player magazine because I used to have this thing in the back, the spotlight section.
Yeah.
And I think in the you tell a little bit about yourself, and then kind of what your goals are as a player. And I remember at the time I said I wanted to know how to do Travis picking, and I wanted
Yeah.
to do like some chord melody stuff, like Wes Montgomery,
Mm-hmm.
and something else. I can't remember what it was. And I did realize those goals. I mean, certainly not, not to the level of Wes Montgomery's
Yeah.
prowess, which is entirely his own, but I did come up with my own way of doing it. And I certainly learned how to do the Travis picking in such a way. So there has been different things over the years, which I have, my docket of stuff I've wanted to learn. Right.
Okay.
And then I would go out and I like, for instance, at one point I realized, excuse me, that I was not someone that could do like a prolonged set of solo material, right?
Okay.
Because I was always somebody who needed, all my playing was predicated on playing with a band.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, I remember I was doing a thing, it was a Fender thing, but with my band at the, I think we were out in California, we were doing a Fender thing at the Guitar Center in Hollywood.
Okay.
Our band was set up in one room, kind of in the vintage room. Doyle Dykes was set up doing his stuff. We were doing these staggered sets. He would come out, check us out, and then I went and saw his thing. And I remember he opened up one set with just doing it was like a shuffle, like in E, some kind of a shuffle pattern thing. And he was able to, play a bass line along with, chords as well as lead on top of it. And I was into Chet Atkins and certainly Jerry Reed and Merle Travis, but I hadn't really done the deep dive at that point. When I saw Doyle do that stuff, I thought, I just need to learn. I need to learn how to do some of this stuff so I can, if called upon, I can sit in a chair with by myself without tracks and do something. And so I made a concerted effort to put time in so that I learned a few Chet songs, a dozen or so. And that took a lot. I mean, that was definitely a brain burner. But like with anything, I think that what you find is that once you crack the code, then you can do it by ear. But a lot of times, cracking that code, it helps to have some, not a cheat, but something that helps you overcome whatever it was that was causing you a delay in learning that in the first place. For instance. Yeah. To me, it seemed to me that everyone that could do the Merle Travis, Chet Atkins thing had like a family member that could do it. You know what I mean? Right. Or they were around people that could do it. And I wasn't around anybody that could do it. With the exception of, there was a guy up at college that could do like Cannonball Rag and stuff like that. And I remember I would just sit in awe. I was like, how is this even possible? So I got a book of transcriptions. I got a book of Chet Atkins transcriptions, and I worked on, I think the first one I worked on was Chinatown.
Yeah.
And after I figured that one out, and it took a long time. I mean, I started off really slow, one measure, two measure. Okay, let's play those two measures in time.
Yeah.
Okay, I've memorized those two. Let's add a third. You know what I mean? It took that long. But I found that once I did that, then I could hear the stuff on record.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, I still learned some other stuff via transcriptions, but I could also listen by ear and pick stuff up and know what it was. And so that was the impetus for me to be able to get into that style better. And as a result, I wrote a lot of tunes kind of utilizing that finger style approach. I never used a thumb pick. I was always picking fingers, but I practiced it enough that I could do that style to a level that I was satisfied with and can still kind of pull out. But so that was a huge transitional period. And there was always a few different, harmonic things that I would get stuck on, like in changes. There would always be a manipulation of when to throw in, the melodic minor scale, the harmonic minor scale. I mean, to me, it was always like, oh, harmonic minor scale, I'm going to use that, when I'm over the sharp 5 and 5 chord of a minor blues. There we go.
Yeah.
and because I wasn't playing standards all the time, I finally got to the point where I learned how to play over these changes, especially like when you're doing like a 3-6-2-5 turnaround in a blues. I would hear people throw in this extra, scalar information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's harmonic minor scale. And I was like, no, that's melodic minor scale. And then I decoded it. And once I decoded it, and it was really Robin Ford that helped me with that, just hearing what he did over that stuff.
Yeah.
Then I was like, oh, now I get it. And so now I'm much more confident of playing over standards now than I ever have been. Because, there was at one point in time where I especially when I was in college, because I wanted to know about harmony, know how to play over changes, but I just wasn't passionate about learning standards. They just didn't do anything for me for the most part.
Yeah.
At that time, later on, I started. There were tunes that I gravitated towards and learned and kind of have memorized and occasionally like to play just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
But I always thought of at that particular point in time that, at some point, like a magic bulb went off and you could just play over tunes.
Yeah.
Right. And then I had to realize that, no, regardless, you need to know the songs. And that was a big deal for me to know that there wasn't just some jazz switch that went on. Now I can play jazz. It's like, you still need to learn the songs and memorize the tunes, know the melody. Mm-hmm. And yes, there are some chordal things in these various different standards that are similar that you can apply the same kind of theory to. You still need to know the songs in a way that you're not like, oh, now I'm going to do the arpeggio of this particular.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It took me a while to get there, but I got there. So nowadays, I'll still like say, I always wanted to learn this particular tune. I'll learn it and try to keep it in some kind of performance oriented level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'll learn something, but a lot of times I go back and I it's all about kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not modifying, but fine tuning things. Like for me, the thing that drew me to guitar was, the vibrato, tone stuff, articulation, so on and so forth. And I'm always kind of fine tuning that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to refine the way that I play. But that being said, I still learn new things all the time. So to me, like for instance, my wife and my daughter the other day, they're like, we're going to go out shopping. We'll be back. And I was still kind of down and out with the Cove. So I was sitting there and it was in the living room and the TV was on, but nothing was playing. And I just sat with my guitar and I just take out my phone and I was like, oh, I just wanted to learn this tune. It was a Hendrix thing or something.
Yeah.
And you'd think I'd know every Hendrix song.
Yeah.
But, it's weird. It's like there's certain things that you have learned all the way through and other tunes you've liked, but you've never played,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ended up just putting the phone open and I started playing this song and learning this. And I was like, oh, once I learned that, it takes me in a different direction. Well, 2 hours later, my wife and my daughter come home and they're like, well, what have you been doing? I go, oh, I've just been playing. So you've been playing the whole time we've been gone. I'm like, well, yeah. And so that happens all the time. I'm always like, if I'm at Wildwood, I'm playing guitar all day.
Yeah.
And in doing those videos, I try to keep them very extemporaneous. I mean, there are certain things I will gravitate to depending on the guitar or depending on the sound or depending on how well the guitar is staying in tune. If a guitar is being temperamental, I'll kind of switch to a grab bag of of things that I know are not dependent on hitting any open strings that are going to indicate that the intonation of the thing is fucked up.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, I'm just kind of playing in the moment. But I'll grab a guitar from the store and I'll go back to the hotel and I'll play a good part of the night back to the hotel. So I'm always playing, but it's a combination of refining, maintaining the repertoire I already have, creating new tunes, and then just having fun going online and playing material. I find that most of the stuff I play along with is older stuff. I'm not real, although I'll see some things of newer players doing stuff that I think are astounding, and I'll just kind of adapt them to what I'm doing in a way that makes them my own per se. I don't sit down and figure out anybody else's stuff per se. A lot of times it'll just be a chord or something. But anyway, so it's always evolving. I'm never just okay with just not learning something new or messing with something that's going to be inspiring me to do something different.
That's cool. Were you ever the kind of player that sits down with the metronome, playing up and down scales and seeing how fast you can get it? Yeah,
I did. I mean, but most of that was during college. When I was doing, kind of that the Chet Atkins, Merle Travis deep dive, I would put the metronome on, and occasionally I would put the metronome on and I would just jam with the metronome on just to kind of mess with time,
Okay.
But I haven't done that in a while. But during college, I would put on the metronome because at that when I got to college, I couldn't really alternate pick really at all. I mean, I couldn't even like tremolo pick worth a shit. Okay. And so that was kind of a deep dive for me. So when I learned all my major scales up and down the neck, and then did all the different major scales and all the different intervals and so on and so forth, I would put on the metronome and go up and down the neck, doing my major scales, doing them in the circle of fifths, doing them into the different intervals, and that was helpful. But once I got out of college, I didn't do it all that much.
Okay. I mean, it's I spent recently, because same with you, my alternate picking was shit. I had this ceiling that I couldn't break, so I went to a teacher, said, "Look, my alternate picking sucks." And he said, "All right, okay." So we started working on it, and he's a very meticulous teacher. He's like, "Right, put the click on, whatever it was, 80. You're going to go up and down your scales at triplets." He said, "I want you to play it at that speed for 2 weeks. You come back and we'll bump it up to 100, 120, whatever it was." And we slowly start raising the ceiling. And I spent years just working on it. And it's now at the stage where I'm really like, yeah, okay, I'm happy with it. And I'll just maintain it. And then I was out at a jam night and I couldn't fucking improvise. I'd spent so long just working on my scales and picking. My improvising ain't worth a shit. And so, I got this green Strat. You can see that there. I tuned it to E flat.
Actually, I can't.
All right, it's this green Strat here.
Oh, there it is.
And
surf green. Yes.
Yeah, I tuned it down a half step and just started jamming to Hendrix.
Yes.
And it was like, there you go, because that's kind of like, I think that's fairly similar to you. That's how I learned guitar. I just put on records, I played along to them, I jammed along, I tried to figure them out. Some of it I got right, some of it I got wrong. And you eke it out, and that's how I learned to play.
Yep.
So it's like going back to what I was doing when I was, a teenager.
And it's still a blast. It's still the funnest.
It is. It's more fun, and just revisiting all those old tunes that I thought I had down and realized I didn't, and now I've got to get them down.
Well, what's amazing is that in doing that, you realize, I'd always played it this way, but that's not right. It's actually this. And then you're like, that's totally cool. And then that unlocks a whole nother thing.
Yeah. That's an open string. I was fretting. Oh, right. So now I got to play. Yeah.
One of the things that I found out, I can't remember how long ago I actually realized it, but like in playing Little Wing, I think a lot of people thought that it goes B minor, B flat minor, A minor, but it's B minor, B flat major, A minor, and that descending thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit. Because for years I just played it as I played those all as minors, and you can, and it sounds fine.
Yeah.
But when you add that major into that B flat, it gives it a thing. And then of course then what I'll do is I'll put like a dominant 7 with a flat fifth in there, and then it really sounds juicy when you're doing that little half step thing. But it's just little things like that. You realize, I mean, all these years I've been playing it like that, and that's
I'm
incorrect.
playing it wrong. Yeah. I had a student come on Tuesday, and he said, "I want to learn All Right Now." I was like, "All right, okay, that's a fairly everyone should know that." And so I put the record on. I played the riff. I went, "No, there's an open G string in it."
Right.
No, I've been playing it wrong. It was. I haven't played that riff for 15 years, and I learned something new. So I was like, "Thank you very much. I'm playing it wrong."
Absolutely. I mean, it just happens.
Yeah,
it happens. You know, especially a lot of classic rock stuff like that, where you're like, you heard it one way when you were a kid.
Yeah,
you've played it that way ever since.
It maybe changed as well every gig you've done, and then you've moved away. You move away so far from it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but that's what makes guitar great. It's a never ending learning, refining, you know, doing the thing. It's magnificent.
Do you think there's anything that sort of isn't being taught either in schools or online? Things people are missing, like you're not doing that. People should be doing that.
You know, it's, you know, as someone who has done a ton of clinics over the years, you know, both, you know, all of my clinics, even when I was doing them for Fender or whoever, there was always an element of, I'm going to talk about the gear that I'm doing. Of course, I'm just going to play, but there was always a level of showing what I'm doing, and people would ask questions. And then, of course, the Hal Leonard clinics were always more based on playing and showing people instructors. And then I did the stuff at the colleges, and then I would do stuff at music schools, you know, that would coincide with tours all over the States. And of course, and I've been in Europe doing stuff, and I've gotten to the point where I just don't want to do it right now. and the reason is because the last few that I've done, I mean, and I enjoy it. It's a weird thing. I did a session in, I was in Greece in September, and I did a thing at a college, a music school, that was not only for college age people, but was also for, you know, there were people there taking lessons that were professionals, that were, you know, older people that wanted to refine their playing. And then I used to do a fair deal of private lessons as well, as far as Skype lessons, especially during COVID. You know, I started to do more, and it was just fascinating to me how I look at learning new information. For instance, I was talking about, not the name drop, but I did this guitar camp. I always do Andy Wood's guitar camp, which I enjoy. Andy Wood's incredible. Everybody else there is incredible. It's a great hang. It's just a good time. And I was sharing this house with with Eric Johnson. So we're talking, and then, you know, it was curious to me, the people that were asking questions of Eric Johnson, and then it came to me that, you know, I was in the crowd, and I was like, I know exactly what I would ask Eric Johnson, or if I was taking a lesson from whoever, I would say, you know, it's great, all this stuff, but when you play over like an A minor 7 chord, give me like 4 go-to voicings that you use, because your voicings are different and they're cool. And like I would ask that. Whereas I find that the questions that are asked a lot of times in clinics and even in lessons are, it's not that. It's more of like these overarching questions, like a lot of times they just want you to hear them play. You know what I mean? Like, hey, can you listen to what I'm doing? Tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'm like, well, it's never about doing wrong. It's, you know, you feel what you're doing in the moment. I can make suggestions of, hey, when you're playing over this chord, you could add this, that, and the next thing. But I find that people, it's gotten to the point where a lot of people, there's so much information out there, and you can go online and have access to all this different stuff. And it's like, there's been no better time in the history of making music to learn, because everything is so accessible. Not only, you know, you've got transcriptions of stuff available that have never been available before. You got this slow down technology where you can slow it down to any tempo. It's going to be in tune with your guitar. You can go on YouTube and see the actual performers that you enjoy showing you how to play their tunes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's just so much stuff. So there's really no reason to suck. Yet people want you to like open up their cranium, pour the shit in their brain, close it up again, and then have them be, now I'm good. It's like, you don't realize you got to put the time in. And then my latest thing that I've been saying in if I find myself in these clinic environments or whatever, I was like, listen, you've got to be just this side of crazy to do this, because you have got to be so obsessed to the point of like being OCD or whatever you want to call it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like, I was like, listen, I don't play sports. It's not like I'm not out there golfing. I'm not in a dart league. I'm not in a bowling league. You know, I don't do this, that, and the next thing. It's like, I do what I do and I reproduce. You know, I play guitar and I reproduce. And I got 4 kids. I got to make sure they're
pretty good at it.
You know what I mean? And I make sure my wife, all that stuff is cool, and take care of what I need to around the house. But my entertainment, my hobby, everything is about playing guitar or doing what I do.
Yeah.
And that's how you get to the point where people are like, well, how do you do this, that, and the next thing? Like, well, at the expense of everything else, quite honestly.
Yeah. I don't have any hobbies. I don't do anything else. This is my life. Do you think it's a case that people are just looking for shortcuts? They're thinking that there's a quick answer? I
think so. I think they're looking for, there's going to, at some point, the light's going to switch on. And they'll kind of like, and I've had the same thing, and I've had to realize like, no. But if you just do it, it's like, I always tell people, it's like, listen, if you play every day, you're going to notice improvement. You play every day, challenge yourself, put yourself in environments where you're actually performing music.
Yeah.
Where it's all about playing music. Because a lot of people will like get into this thing where, I've really been practicing these scales, and I've really, I've been working them up and down the neck. And I'm like, well, have you been playing at all? Like, even if it's playing along with tracks.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Well, no, I've just been really trying to get into the theory behind it all. I go, that's all well and good, but it's about making music. Yeah. So whatever you do, nothing should be stopping you from making music with the skill set you currently have. Because as guitar players, we're always thinking at some point down the line, we're going to be worth a shit. You know what I mean? It's always at some point in the horizon. Well, I will have learned X, Y, and Z by then, and I'll be able to. And I always tell people, listen, the point is to make music and to be fulfilled as a musician in the moment. So whatever skill set you're at, be able to make music and enjoy making music with where you're at. You can always add more stuff to the stew, but don't sacrifice the now for some pie in the sky thing on down the line. And that's hard for a lot of people to get in their brains.
I know. Yeah, I've got I think she's 9 or 10-year-old student. Like, she's like, I don't know what it's like with kids in the US, but over here there's so much pressure on kids they've got exams they got to take, they have extra schoolwork and stuff. She's getting really stressed out, and I can see that she's getting stressed out. And we're going through this song, and I said, let's just stop, and I said, what you've accomplished in like the last year, 18 months. You're able to play through most of your open chords. You can play it in rhythm. You can play it in time. You can read a chart and play it at the same time. And you're listening to the song. That's 5 things that you're doing. And you got to make it sound musical. I said, do you know how many people try this, don't even get to where you're at, quit and fail? I was like, most of them. 95% people, they all pick up an instrument, regardless of what it is. They fail at the first 18 months.
Right.
I said, like you said, you just got to keep doing it you're just chipping away at that little block.
Right.
What you're doing is fantastic. You're struggling, but you're doing it.
Right.
It's a little bit of a struggle, and she was like, okay. I said, just keep at it, and you're just going to chip away at it. You'll come back 1 week and you'll be like, can do it.
Exactly.
Just got to keep doing it. And I don't know what it is, that like instant gratification that we get from Instagram and YouTube, and it's just we click a button and it's there. There's that 18 months, 2 years of just putting work in and not seeing results. Right. And then one day it clicks and you get it. And I just think that's missing a lot from a lot of people.
Right. Well, it's good to have like a goal too. I mean,
Yeah.
if your goal is to play out and to perform live, well, then have some gig that's set up like 9 months into the future. That could be some family event. For me and my cohorts, when we started in the summer of 7th grade, it's like, okay, by May of next year, we're going to play at our 8th grade graduation, and we're going to rock out, and we're going to get all the girls to love us, right? That was the thing.
Yeah.
And by God, we did
worked.
it. Yeah, that was our goal. And we made that happen. So I that's a good thing to have too, I think, for folks, is like, look, have a goal to reach for and be like, by God, by this time I'm going to be able to play, or I'm going to go to a jam and I'm going to play these songs, or I'm going to with my I'm going to put together a set and play it here at this event. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to just like aimlessly just, I think I'll learn this and that. You know what I mean? It's, if their goal is to actually perform and
in the diary.
Then have a deadline to work for.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think having that little bit of pressure just kind of gives you a bit of a kick up the arse, because that date isn't moving, and you've got to be ready for it.
Exactly.
So yeah, if you had $1,000, what would you get? A guitar or an amp?
Oh, that's a good one. It would have to be predicated on what was available at the store, because I was just at a music store out in Portland, and it was a cool music store because it was, I love funky old used joints.
Where
they have all manner of different things. Like, it used to be like music stores when I was a kid, where you'd go in and there would just be a wall of stuff of various different used things and used amps, and then it was fun because they were actually affordable. And this store was one of those stores where you went in, it's like, they actually have guitars here for like $600, but they had this Reverend head, and I knew my buddy Joe Naylor from Reverend. They made amp heads for a little bit, and they were cool because they were all tube.
Yeah.
And my buddy Rick Vito still plays one, one of these little Reverend Hellhound. It was $400. I was like, today it's an amp day.
It's an amp.
So,
I guess. Yeah.
But by the same token, last time I was in Portland, I was in a store, a really cool little shop that was actually not open to the public yet. They had still not it was by appointment only. And I didn't know this. I was just, my daughter lives there, and she was kind of showing us this cool street, where there was a bunch of cool shops. Like, oh, look, there's a guitar shop. And I looked and I said, oh, closed by appointment only. I'm like, shit. And then the guy opened the door. He's like, can I help you? I'm like, oh, I'm just in town and looking around. And he's like, well, come on in, take a look around. And out of the corner of my eyes, he's showing us around. He had some kind of, some high buck stuff, so like an old Fender Deluxe and this, that, and the next thing. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw this acoustic, and it was this kind of, I knew it was an old K because a friend of mine had lent me a guitar just like that. And it was a K from early 60s. And it was the body size of like a SJ200.
Okay.
And so I was like, what's the deal with that guitar? He's like, oh, that was owned by so-and-so, that, some singer songwriter. And he goes, someone must have worked on that guitar, because it's really awesome. And I go, how much is it? And he goes, $800. I'm like, interesting. And I picked it up and I put it down and I played one chord, and I was like, I'll take it.
What was the chord? Was it a G chord?
I played my my Care Bear chord, my E major 9 chord in open position. Bring.
Okay.
I played that. I was like, oh my God, it sounds glorious. Plus, it got a big old neck on it. But the intonation on that thing up and down the neck was insane. So I really like finding the off-brand stuff, or the things that are not fashionable because the price hasn't gone insane. Because I've played a lot of guitars that were $3,000 or more that didn't play anywhere near the way that guitar played and sounded, and I still play that guitar all the time.
Nice.
So
those
that's kind of a thing for it. The answer is yes. It could be a guitar or an amp.
Yeah, that's cool. And are you planning on coming to the UK anytime soon?
Well, we were we were supposed to come in April, but it kind of got waylaid and we didn't book it in time.
Okay.
And from what I understand is that in order to do it right, I probably am not going to come until 2025. But
Okay.
I am coming over to Europe in September to do some stuff. We're going to do the guitar show in Mannheim again and do some other things. And I have this new multi-effect coming out from Jam Pedals. And so there's talk about going over and seeing the Mick and Dan over at the pedal show.
Pedal show, yeah.
and maybe put some gigs around at the tail end of our German tour. So possibly in September, but we shall see. That remains to be seen.
Well, if you do, just drop me a line and I'll either come down or hook you up with some amps and stuff.
Awesome. So whereabouts are you located?
I'm in London, South London.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I'm
Londinium.
Yes, 10, 11 miles from right in the center of town. So
nice. Well, last time we played there, we did the Half Moon Putney.
I know it very well.
We sold that place out. We rocked their brains.
It's a really cool little pub right on the river.
Yeah, I loved it. That was a blast.
Really cool little venue. All right, cool. Well, I will just say thank you for your time. I do really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.